Congratulations, you made it inside. You know, for a lot of people, that's the hardest thing to do of all. You've taken that first step. There's going to be a lot of information that I'm going to give you today. But the most important thing, and the reason that I'm starting off with this, is because this is something you can apply to anything you do in your life. So the number one nugget I'm going to give you is to do it for the love of it. You know, I started off many, many years ago doing this without even knowing what voiceover was. I just loved creating voices. I loved embodying characters. I did it when there was no money involved, when there was nothing but the pure joy of taking a character, taking something from nothing, looking at a comic book, bringing something off the page, and acting it out, whether anybody was watching or not. I loved the whole idea of embodying a character, especially because it took me out of whatever pain or frustration I was going through in my life at that time. I didn't realize that by doing it every single day, I was actually practicing for something that I would end up doing for the rest of my life. So hopefully this is something that you have been doing in your life without even realizing it. Every time you've opened a comic book, every time you've looked at a children's book, every time you have watched a TV show and felt something from it, you're actually practicing this craft without even realizing it. You're actually doing it because you love this medium. Hopefully that's why you're here today. If you're here because you want to get rich or you want to get famous, please don't do it for those reasons, because there is a possibility that that can happen in this work. However, if you don't love it every single day that you're doing it, if you get rich and or famous, none of that's going to mean anything, because you could be miserable creating this art. Creation of art should be a joyful experience. Do what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. No, wait, I don't believe that, because I work harder now than I ever have, but I love what I do every single day. No regrets. Okay, ready to do something scary? That's actually become my favorite part now. It used to be literally the thing that I would avoid more than anything else, and that is taking a risk. So, how did my risk begin? What got me started on this journey? I got to give you a little backstory here. It began when I was a starving musician during the 80s. Literally a starving musician. I was playing for an R&B band opening for heavy metal acts, so you can imagine that wasn't going that well. But I thought that's what I really wanted to do, and I wanted to try something different and exciting, and to me that was both of those things. I had to support myself, so I got a job in a mailroom at a film company. One of my buddies hired me there to do some moving and stuff at first, and driving for the company, all the terrible jobs that nobody else really wanted to do. Fortunately, I had the deepest voice in the mailroom. And this same guy, his name is Victor Garcia, I'm going to tell you because he was really the guy that turned this around for me, offered me the possible role on a Japanimation project. And the way that would work is if I would come in on the weekend and I would audition for this thing. And if I got the job, I would immediately be hired and I would just work the whole day and they'd actually pay me a little bit for it. But what really got me was that he offered me free food. And being a starving musician, I couldn't turn that down. Free breakfast and free lunch to come in on a Saturday and hang out with my buddies? Yeah, I'm gonna do that. So what I didn't know was that they were gonna put me up to that microphone right away, and that I would have to lip sync to this image that was already done on screen from a Japanese animated project. And as I stepped up to the microphone, I realized that I was surrounded by some of the best actors in the city. And I had to follow them. I watched them work a little bit, and by the time I got up to the microphone, I was shaking so hard, I literally thought I was going to poop myself. The fear was so incredible. But I looked at the screen and they said, this is a creature who's going to rip the arm off of another creature and beat him with it. What would that sound like? And I went, oh, I can do that. I do that all the time. And so I just looked at the screen and went, and they said, all right, you're hired. And I went, what? And then the panic set in again, because I realized at some point I'm going to have to say words. It went a lot better than expected, but the fear was with me that whole time. I was taking a risk over and over and over that day. And on the other side of it, every single time I did that, I had the sensation that I'm actually accomplishing something. I'm walking through that fear and I'm creating something. And that was a new feeling for me. I was always playing it safe up until that point. So taking a risk was not only transformative that day, if I hadn't taken that risk that day, I could be doing something else for a living. None of this would have happened. I can't tell you how many times I've been in the studio working with new actors where that sense of fear starts to overwhelm them. And we all have it. It's part of the business. It's just part of the gig. The fear is going to come. The trick is to walk through it anyway. You feel it and you do it anyway. It's so important to do that because on the other side of it can be some amazing, amazing things. Here's the great part. Once you've taken that risk and gotten through that initial fear, you're going to start to hear the voice of you. There's a unique quality that only you have that's different from every single other actor in that room. If you're in a room, even with actors who have been doing this for 20 or 30 years, they might be technically better than you, but they're not going to have that unique quality that only you can bring to the party. So be aware of that as you're walking through the fear, as you're working on this stuff. Listen to that voice that you're not going to hear anywhere else in the world. That is the unique you that you bring to the party and that will differentiate you from everybody else in this business. Your voice is an incredible instrument for communication. You're using it every day already, whether you're sticking up for yourself or helping someone else to be heard. Why not use it to create art? You have that ability, innate ability, to do this already. You do it every single day. All you got to do is focus it in, and you just need a little bit of help to do that. So here's a risk that you can take right now. Pick up a piece of reading material, whatever you happen to have laying around, and create a voice out of it. Whether it's a newspaper, instructions for building a cabinet, doesn't really matter what it is. Just read it out loud, create a character, and try to put you into that character. That's probably the hardest thing to do in voiceover, really, is to find your voice. So let's start there, get through that, and everything else will be easier from that point on. I'm going to give you a little example. I have a box in front of me. It's a, what is this? It's a sprinkler timer. It just has some general directions on it and indications of what the thing does. I'm not going to tell you what brand it is. I'm not even going to show it to you because that would be inappropriate. But I'm just going to find the first thing I have on here and I'm going to see what happens. It's scary, right? I'm taking a risk. Here we go. Largest in class, LCD, and dial. Make it easy to program and monitor your system. Now you could apply that to some giant robot that's standing in front of you. You've actually discovered the key to turning on this robot. Yeah, it's a sprinkler system, but you see what's happened here? All of a sudden we have this character that can turn on some giant robot that can, launch a satellite into space. You can literally do that with anything. Try it. Just try it out today. If you have people around, even better, especially kids. Try it out in front of kids because they're going to tell you the truth. Kids are going to say, no, that didn't work for me. Try it again. So you try it again. Take another risk and see what happens on the other side of that. And all of a sudden, within the course of a few minutes, you might have a brand new character that has never been performed before. Amazing, right? Now, you got that character? Record it. Take out your phone or whatever recording device you might have. You might even have like an old cassette player. That's what I used to start with. But record it. See what it sounds like. A lot of people don't like the sound of their own voice. It's a tough thing to get past. But again, that's another risk. You've got to be willing to listen to your own voice so that you can change it up and do different things with it. And make friends with that too. You have to become comfortable with the sound of your own voice. But just let it loose. Don't put so much pressure on yourself for it to sound good or any particular way. Just do it like you would as you were a child, sitting in a sandbox and playing like you would have two action figures when you're a little kid and you have them talking to each other. Go there in your mind. Play like you were when you were a child, like nobody else was listening. And if they are listening, even better. Don't worry about it. Just have fun. That's what this is really all about. That's the essence of the best cartoons, the best entertainment you're going to find is when the actors are actually having fun doing it. And what have you got to lose, honestly? You've already taken the hardest risk of all. Okay, so you've taken that risk now. What's next? You ready to do something really scary? How about failure? I know you're saying, what? Well, here's the next section. Failure is success. No, really. If you ask any successful person, they will tell you that they have failed way more than they've succeeded. In fact, if you don't fail, how are you going to succeed? One cannot happen without the other. It's like the dark side and the light side. They have to go hand in hand. I failed probably 38 times in the course of recording this. I'm not comfortable in front of a camera. I'm a voiceover guy. And yes, I've failed many times to get to this point. I'm probably going to fail again many times before this is over. But the great thing is, with each failure, there is also a success. I get back up again. And on the other side of that, something better comes out of it. This, I promise you, is the best take that I've had in a whole day of shooting this stuff. When I was doing these inspirational speeches for Toonami, my favorite one is called Fall Down 7 Times, Get Up 8. It's about lots of failures and little successes after each one. Every time you do that, it's going to take that insecurity, that fear of the failure, and it's going to turn it into a little success. And then you fall down again and you get back up again and you have another little success. And think of it like building blocks. Those successes start building on each other until you have a piece of security that you didn't have before. You have that sense of confidence, that little orb of confidence that you didn't have before you took that risk. On the other side of failure is the possibility of creating a new character. There are a lot of actors that are called upon to do impressions, for example, of other actors' performances or of characters, established characters. Many times when I've gone into the studio, I'm not a very good impressionist, but I'll go in and I'll give it a shot. And usually what happens is my interpretation of that impression is the genesis of a new character. I don't do that impression very well. There are a million other guys who do that really, really well. But my attempt at that, even in the audition process, can be the genesis of creating a brand new character that's never heard before in the world. But I couldn't do that without being willing to fail. And that failure led to that success of that new character. You gotta be willing to do it. Fail magnificently. Try something new. Don't be afraid of failure. Embrace the failure. The other side of that is gonna be something magnificent, I promise you. So here's another thing about failure. Judgment. Judgment can be a crippling thing if you're listening to it from everybody around you, or if you're listening to the judgment of someone that might have said something to you a long time ago, might have ingrained something into you where you feel like you're not good enough to do this, or you're not equipped to do this. Throw all that stuff away. Now is the time to take your power back. Now is just me and you. We're right here. You have the power to make that choice right now to take that power back. The only judgment that matters is what you think about yourself. We've already decided that you're willing to take that risk and fail and get back up again and to create that little bit of success. So that overrides any judgment that tells you you can't do this. You just proved that you can. Don't let the voices tell you what you can and can't do. Just do it. Okay, here's my favorite part. Looking stupid. Honestly, when you were a little kid and you went to play in a sandbox, did you care about how you looked? Did you care about getting dirty or about what other people thought of you when you were just playing and throwing stuff around and having toys talk to each other and hanging out with your buddies? No, you got as stupid as you possibly could. That was almost the goal. That's the goal here. Not necessarily when you're doing a commercial or something, where you really have to laser focus in, but in the beginning stages of this, to let go of all the nonsense that's going on in your brain that would stop you from having fun doing this work. You gotta go to the sandbox. Go back to that place in your childhood where you were completely uninhibited, where anything went. If you had a thought, you let that thought out. If your friend had a thought, you played with them. That's what voiceover is really about. It's about going back to that place where you are childlike, not necessarily childish. But if you go into the studio and you're worried about how you look, about, I'm going to dress a certain way, it's fine to dress up if you want to, if that's your thing. This is as dressed up as I ever get. I have holes in my jeans right now. You can't see that, but these are my work clothes. And during the summer, I'll even go in shorts. I don't care about what I look like because I'm not being judged on how I look, which is the way a lot of the entertainment industry functions. In voiceover, you're going to be judged on what you can do. And that's the best thing. Once you get past the fear of the judgment, you go in and you start creating from that childlike place in the sandbox. I want you to enjoy this process. In fact, to me, looking stupid is the most important part. It's integral in everything that I do. Make some faces, slobber all over yourself, contort your body. My dear friend D. Bradley Baker actually manipulates his sinuses to create characters. There's, for example, like a pig character he's doing. He'll actually put his fingers on his sinus cavities and he will manipulate his face, and believe me, it's not pretty when he does it. He even agrees with this. But say you're going, now that was pretty, I know, that was pretty, right? But if you want to change that up even more, try a different part in the face. Now that was not pretty. I'm sure that wasn't, I'm not even looking at the camera, but I know that that was not pretty. But you heard how the voice changed by doing that. By even crossing the eyes, it changes the inflection of the character. Don't worry about looking stupid. That's the greatest joy of voiceover, is that you don't have to worry about what you look like. There are people that are more used to being on camera, and they'll do their makeup and their hair before they come in the studio, and they're afraid to move around too much. They don't want to, get things messed up. You got to let all that go when you go into a voice acting studio. Just let it go and be as stupid as you need to be to get that character out. It's critical to the creation of that character. Let me give you another example of looking stupid in the studio. Now, this one actually included smelling a little different too. When I went in to perform Wolverine for the first time after booking the gig, I walked in to do X-Men Legends. And I think with the very first swipe that I did, with the claws out, I had the claws gone. I didn't have the real claws like I do today, but imagining that I had the claws in my hand, and I went in front of the microphone. When I do that movement, I didn't realize that it actually creates the sensation that I need to fart. Yeah, we're going there. The reason that I'm telling you this is because the very first time I did it, I actually did fart. I did the, and on the other side of that was a, I didn't think that the microphone would pick it up, but it was the first time I was playing Wolverine, one of the most beloved characters of all time. And I didn't want to mess that up. And so I didn't admit that I had farted in the studio, but I just told the engineer, I think I heard some weird noise in the room. Can I do that again? And they let me do it again. And we got past that moment, and the fear passed that, this is going to happen every single time. It doesn't happen every time, but it does happen a lot, especially when I do Wolverine. For some reason, every time I do that swiping motion with Wolverine, it does create that sensation in my belly. Well, as I carried on in my career, I decided to use that to my advantage, because the best takes that I would get in my fight scenes was when that sensation would arise. I knew that I was going deep enough to create that sensation. I was feeling it in my whole body. That's something that you have to embrace also. And it's part of the looking stupid thing, because when I'm going there, I know that it's not a pretty look. I know that my body is flexing. I know that because after the fact, my whole body hurts as though I've been in that fight. There have been so many occasions where I've actually done the voice of Wolverine and done that swipe, and the fart stays in. I don't even let the engineer know about it. I don't ask for a retake. It's part of the fight scene. So I like to imagine that these superhero characters, even under the craziest superheroic conditions, might have a real body reaction, like a fart, like a belch, like a slobber, like a weird face. That becomes part of the character. So go for it. If you accidentally fart when you're doing a character, it's okay, dude. Unless it really smells bad, then just clear the room and apologize. Next, we're going to talk about listening. Now, when you walk into a recording studio, you might have a preconceived notion of what you're going to do. You might have read the script the night before. You might know a little something about the character. Don't hold on to that so that it's so precious you can't hear the direction that the other people in the room are going to give you. It's great to have all that information that sort of pops up for you. And being the organic actor that I am, I always have some sort of preconceived notion of what I'm going to do in a studio if I'm given that information in advance. But what's even more critical is when you walk into that room, sure, you take those ideas, but you've got to be able to listen to everyone else in the room, because these people have been living with this project much longer than you have. In many cases, they've been working on the project for 2 or 3 years. Even at the audition stage, if you have a little bit of direction on where that character is going to go, make sure that you even read it out loud, read the stage direction out loud, and listen to that information as it's coming in. If you don't listen to the other actors around you, or the director, or the information that's even in front of you on the page, you might miss a critical element of what that character is supposed to be in the grand vision of all these other people who've been working on it for so long. When you do get into the studio and you're working with other actors, listen to the other actors' performances. They might inform a completely different choice to take that character in a different direction. It might change everything, but make sure you're open to that, open to listening to what the director might be telling you with a little bit of a correction for the character. They might give you something as simple as make the character 20% happier. That might be tough to do if you're having a hard day, but you got to do it. Listen to the director and incorporate that into whatever you came into the room with. Listening is so important. Do not negate the power of that. And if the director does give you some input and you don't understand exactly what they're telling you, ask. They want you not only to do well, but they have this bigger vision of where this character is going to go in the story. Don't be afraid to ask. Listen to what other actors do. Watch movies, TV, in video games. Listen to what the characters are doing. Listen to the choices that they made in every scenario that they have to walk through. Listen to how other people speak when they're speaking normally on the street. They're not forcing anything, they're not acting. Listen to a normal conversation and how that sounds, how people interact with each other. What you really want to do more than anything else in voice acting is to be natural. You want to have a natural conversation as though, even if you're some crazy creature in some alternate universe, you want that creature to be performing as naturally as he possibly could, as he or she could, as though that were the norm. That is their norm. You have to become that norm. And the only way that you can do that is by listening to how other people do it before you. A lot of people start out in voiceover by doing impressions. Now, impressions are great, but there are a lot of other people out there already established in the industry who do that every single day and are really good at it, and you're going to be competing against them. There's nothing wrong, though. That said, there's nothing wrong with mimicking them, with mimicking your favorite actors, mimicking your favorite performances, incorporating that into your characters as a component of your character. Don't try to do it exactly. In fact, putting impressions on a demo reel is the worst thing that you can possibly do. They want to hear what you're bringing to the party. And listen to sounds that make you feel something, whether it's happy or sad, angry, frustrated. Sounds in nature, sounds of machinery. Sounds are all around you. You have that opportunity to practice this all day long in every single environment. The idea is you want to be able to create something that makes people feel. So listen to all of it and start incorporating that into what you do. So go ahead and mimic these things. I'm going to give you tools later on, which I kind of call an emotional toolbox, where you're going to be able to take all these little pieces that you've been practicing with so far, all these listening elements of, from nature and from other actors and from the people around you and the directors, and you're going to be using that as your little toolbox to create your own performances. That's going to require some training, but this is where you start. And listen to advice, even if you don't agree with it. Actually, especially if you don't agree with it. Because if you don't agree with the advice that somebody's giving you and you're still willing to take that in, it's going to give you a different perspective. Especially if you have to play a character that has morals that are opposite to your own, that's going to come up. So you might as well get used to it now. And listening to advice is something that's very difficult for a lot of people to do in the first place. This will help you in every area of your life. Next up, training. My training probably happened in the most unorthodox way. I learned in the trenches over the course of about 30 years. Hopefully I can streamline that for you so you don't have to do it for 30 years before you have the tools you need. One of the things I can help you with today is technique. That would be a very simple thing that I can fit into this little training here. Let's start with mic technique, for example. One of the big mistakes that a lot of new actors or on-camera actors make when they go in to do voiceover for the first time is mic technique. They don't know how to stay present on the mic and still create the character. So one of the things that I use is what I call standing a Welker away from the microphone, named after the great Frank Welker. He's probably my favorite voice actor in the world. When I told him that a lot of us do this, he didn't even remember teaching that, but Frank is just one of these natural teachers who will offer advice to all of us in the studio. So what he does is he takes his hand like this, sort of like the hang loose sign from Hawaii, puts his thumb up to his lip, the other finger to the microphone, and that's how far away from the mic you should be to start. The engineer, if they need you to come closer or farther away, will tell you, but at least that's a really great baseline of where you need to place your face in front of the microphone to get the optimum sound when you're creating a character. From that, you don't want to deviate too much. You don't want to go to the left or to the right because you're going to go what we call off mic, off axis. It's going to change the sound of your voice on that microphone. You don't want to flail your arms too much. I've gotten to the point now where I can flail like a madman and keep my face completely stable in front of the microphone, so it doesn't change the performance. In the beginning, especially with on-camera actors or theater actors, they're used to using their whole body, and that's wonderful in that medium. It doesn't work in voiceover. The other mistake that people make is when they're doing a scene where they're running, they're going, that's the sound that you want. Unfortunately, some people actually will start running in place, and studios have very sensitive floors, and the microphones are extremely sensitive. They're going to pick up the sound of the footsteps as they're running in front of that microphone. You got to keep your feet planted firmly on the ground. Do it with the rest of your body. Go as hard and fast as you need to go. You can use your arms as long as you're not wearing noisy jewelry like I am today. But you got to keep that face right in front of the microphone, a Welker away. Okay, so that's a little piece of technique. The hardest part is the acting part, and that's the part that a lot of people overlook when they get into voice acting for the first time. They think, okay, I can make a bunch of funny voices, I can do a few impressions, I've got 10 different voices that I can do. I can have a high voice, I can have a low voice, and I can have a creature-y voice. But if you don't know how to act underneath all of that, you can't build a character and you can't sustain a character that you might have to be the lead of some story with for 4 hours or 8 hours per session, or for 26 episodes of a series. If you don't have the acting chops beneath that, you're just making a bunch of noises into a microphone. You might as well be doing in front of the microphone because that's not a character. That's not going to sustain someone's interest for 4 hours in the course of a recording session, or for even a 22-minute episode of a cartoon. You've got to have the acting chops underneath all of that. It's critical. And a little bit of improv training, being able to think on your feet. I went into the studio for a video game years ago, and I had a little bit of information before I went into the studio the night before, which is actually unusual for video games. Usually everything is a cold read, but they told me that I was doing a Caribbean character. So I practiced, I listened to some native speakers online, and I thought I had this down. And I walked into the studio. They handed me the script, and most of the script I hadn't seen before. All I had were some samples at home to work with. They handed me this big script, and they said, oh, by the way, we're going to go Australian with the character. Go. And if I didn't have some acting training and some ability to think on my feet, I would have just had to walk out of the room and quit the job right there. Fortunately, I was able to pull it right out of my you-know-what and do the character. But that came with years of training. That came with a lot of practice. And that came with training from, in my case, being in the studio and doing it for many, many years. We can actually teach you that in this course. We can teach you how not to be afraid if somebody throws a curveball at you. It's critical. That, to me, is part of the organic training that I'm going to come at you with. We're also going to give you some classical training tools. And I'm going to do that by bringing in classically trained professionals, people who have actually studied Shakespeare and studied method and studied all the classical training tools that you might need if my organic approach doesn't necessarily work for you. We're going to have it all for you right here. So now we're going to talk about equipment. What do you need when you're starting out as a voice actor, equipment-wise? Do you need a big studio? Do you need fancy microphones? Not really. No. In the very beginning, you don't need to spend any money other than whatever kind of recording device you might already have. Chances are your phone has a recorder in it, and you can get started in this process of voice acting by recording yourself right into your phone. If you want the sound to be a little bit better at first, you don't need that until you get to the audition stage. But if you want the sound to be a little bit better, build yourself a pillow fort. Build a bunch of pillows like you would when you were a kid and throw a comforter over your head. All of a sudden, you have treated the sound in that room. You have much better sound. In fact, that's what I do in my hotel room when I'm on the road. Now when I am doing auditions, once you get to that stage, you still don't need to spend a tremendous amount of money. It used to be when I would go on the road, I'd take a whole Pro Tools rig with me, and I'd bring this big box that was foamed up on the inside, and I had thousands of dollars worth of equipment with me. You don't need that stuff anymore for the audition process. You just need a really good USB microphone. The one that I prefer personally is called the Apogee iMic. It's about that big. It's about $200. You plug it right into your iPhone or whatever kind of phone you have, or an iPad, and you can do that same sort of sound treatment, whether it's in a hotel room or at home. Build a little pillow fort, put the comforter over your head, put your microphone down in the middle of it, and make sure you stay at least a Welker away. In the case of the USB microphone, you want to stay a little bit farther away, but you can record right into that and you can get some pretty surprisingly good sound. In fact, I've even done broadcast quality from there. I wouldn't recommend that with a USB microphone, but at the very early stages when you first start auditioning, that's literally all you need. You don't need a fancy studio like this. Much later on, once you've got your training, once you're auditioning all the time, once you've got an agent and you really need to get better sound, or you're recording more professional stuff at home, then you can start investing in a real studio and you can start putting Auralex foam on the walls. I talk about these elements, the microphone and the foam and a lot of these things on the website, and we'll have links to that if you guys want to check that out. This microphone right here is many thousands of dollars. You don't need that right away. I have that now because I record promos from home. I do all my Toonami stuff from home. I have a couple different microphones that I prefer, and I will tell you guys about the different kinds of microphones for the different kinds of work you do. You might use a different kind of microphone for commercial work, for example. More of a shotgun style microphone because your voice needs to cut through over music and effects and things like that. This is one of the more well-balanced microphones where it picks up a lot of the bass. A lot of my characters have a lot of big bass tone, for example. So I choose microphones like this one or the Neumann 103 that tend to have a big bass response and still the upper response too. We'll go into all that much later on. But again, in the beginning, don't spend a lot of money on equipment. You don't need it. Wait till you've got some training under your belt. Wait till you've got auditions in front of you, whether it's with an agent or not, before you start investing in that kind of thing. There are a lot of ways that you can actually create some great sound without spending too much money. And once we get into the training, I'll go more in depth on how to do that effectively. Your demo reel. You think you're ready to do it? Not yet. Don't do it until you're ready. This is going to be your calling card. It's one of the biggest mistakes that beginning voice actors make. They either make a reel that's unprofessional that one of their friends helps them put together, or they spend an enormous amount of money and they get this banging reel that sounds and looks professional. But the problem is, those are little teeny tiny snippets of these characters that you might have to sustain for 4 hours or 8 hours at a time in a recording session, or over the course of 26 episodes of a cartoon show. If you're not prepared to do that, if you don't have the proper training underneath you to sustain those characters, then you're misrepresenting yourself. If it's an unprofessional reel or if it's really professional and you're not trained properly, either way, you are misrepresenting yourself, and it could be your first and last impression that a casting director ever sees of you. They remember this stuff. In the very beginning stages of my career, I put together a reel that I thought was really professional, and I put it in front of some people who listened to it and thought, oh boy, this is really green. Now that could have killed my chances to ever work with that person again. Fortunately, it was in the context of a class. I was taking a class with some casting directors and they gave me some input on the reel. It's okay if you're in the context of a class to put some voices together, to put some characters together, and to get some feedback. But you don't want to be sending that out into a professional environment where you're competing with the best people in the world who are already doing this until you are absolutely ready to stand right next to them in the studio and to be able to perform at their caliber. So don't make that mistake. Don't do your reel before it's ready. Now, when you've done your training and you're ready to take that step, to make a professional demo reel. I can help you through that process of what kinds of characters that you want to include in the reel that will best represent you, the length of the reel, the kinds of music to choose, effects if you are going to put any effects in it, and to make sure that they don't overshadow your performance on the reel. This is going to be your calling card. This is what's going to be representing you. It's going to be the first impression that casting directors have of who you are and what you're capable of, what your skill set is. When you are finally ready to make that jump and do the reel, I can also give you recommendations on people to go to so that you get the best quality reel for your money. Here's the part of the business of voice acting, and remember, this is a business that I was actually very uncomfortable with in the beginning: marketing. I actually came from a marketing background. I worked as head of marketing for a film studio. The problem for me was that I was marketing other people's products. I wasn't marketing myself. Selling yourself is something you have to come to terms with in this business. You're going to have to do it at some point. Don't do it again, like the reel. You don't want to do it. That's part of your marketing. You don't want to do it before you're ready. You got to have everything in place. You have to have already done some of this work to start marketing yourself effectively. You already have to, ideally, you already have to have an agent. You have to have performed in something, whether it's a cartoon or a video game. It doesn't necessarily have to be on a high professional level to use it as a marketing tool, but you have to have something to put into your marketing bin in the beginning. Marketing takes a lot of forms. Right now, the biggest form of marketing and the most effective and efficient form of marketing is social media. In fact, some studios even hire people based on how many followers they have. I hate it too, but it's a part of the business and you have to come to terms with it. We're going to show you how all of that works later on, and please don't feel like you have to rush into it right away. Again, wait till you've done some of this work, but I just want you to know ahead of time that is going to be a component, so start making peace with it right now. Now, many times through the course of this video so far, I've said that we're going to address this in much greater detail later on. When is the later on? How about right now? Why don't we get started with the next steps? You guys have asked me to do this for years, and whether you realize it or not, you designed this course. You told me what you want to learn. So, I'm ready to teach you. Blum Studios was created with the intention of teaching you guys this stuff the right way, a comprehensive webinar training series that's easy to follow, step by step. Anybody can do it. No matter where you live, you're going to be able to attend these trainings with me. I'm going to be doing a live Q&A with you with every session, and I encourage you to attend every single one that you can, because that's where the magic happens. It's between you and me. But if for some reason you can't make every one, you're going to have 24/7 access to every replay. You won't miss a thing. You'll also get stuff in there that's not available anywhere else, including little interviews with my friends, some of the greatest voice actors in the world, like mini masterclasses every single month. I do appearances all over the world, and one of the things I talk about most often is how expensive voiceover training can be, and that it's not taught by people who are actually doing the work. We're going to do live trainings together. You're going to have unlimited access to anything you might miss, and I'm going to answer all of your burning questions. Most of all, you're going to get direction from somebody who's been doing this professionally for almost 30 years. I did it the hard way, but you don't have to. You got me. This course is designed to give you all the tools, techniques, and information you need on your journey towards a career in voiceover. While I can't guarantee you'll get work, I can give you a much better chance in this business if you apply what you learn every month and practice, practice, practice. My intention with this course is to save you from potentially decades of unnecessary mistakes and to put you on the right path from the very beginning. So you ready? Go to blumvoxstudios.com/teachmevoiceover and let's do this together.